Hello and welcome to the I&D podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Dunicic. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join our growing international community. Today we go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the nation's second largest city of Jeddah, which experienced a missile attack by Houthi rebels from Yemen right ahead of the nation's second ever Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, to give you some basic context, Saudi Arabia has been leading a coalition fighting Houthi rebels who took control of the Yemen capital, Sana'a, in 2014 from the government of Yemen. Saudi Arabia entered this conflict in 2015 and ever since then has been a major target of the Houthis. This conflict has not just stayed in Yemen, which is a nation bordering Saudi Arabia to the south. It has spilled over into Saudi Arabia and other GCC or Gulf Coast cooperative countries. It should be noted that the Houthi rebels in Yemen are heavily backed by Iran, who has an inherent interest in establishing a puppet state right south of Saudi Arabia's border. Iran and Saudi Arabia are two of the greatest enemies you can imagine, being rival states who have historically been vying and competing against each other for control of the Arab Gulf and the general region of the Middle East. This conflict is not just a proxy war for Saudi Arabia, it's very real, leading the coalition and military fight against these rebels. Now, in Yemen, this conflict really hasn't changed much. It has only led to the loss of massive human lives and one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with both sides having a heavy blame for massive civilian casualties. And not only has the war not changed, there really is no end in sight whatsoever. This problem seems to continue and persist, with no kind of solution being in sight. This conflict, keep in mind, has been going on for 8 years, and 7 of those years have been experiencing direct involvement from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, because of this direct involvement and leading the coalition against the Houthi rebels, Saudi Arabia has become a major target. Houthi rebel attacks within the kingdom are something that does happen on a relatively regular basis, though none have been as large and as prominent as the attacks today, which were on an oil refinery or an oil depot in the city of Jeddah. Jeddah is Saudi Arabia's second largest city and is most well known for being a major or the most major stopping point for Muslims that are going to Mecca to carry out Hajj. Now, the targeting of this oil depot is massive because the oil depot is right next to the international airport of Jeddah, which, during times of Hajj and Muslim pilgrimage, is the world's most trafficked airport for Muslims. This can be viewed as a direct attack by the Houthi rebels, who are Muslims themselves, against the Islamic world. And not just this, but the oil depot itself is one of Saudi Arabia's largest. It produces and contains diesel, gasoline, and crucial fuels that are also used in the desalination of water process. It produces roughly a quarter of all Saudi Arabia's oil and gas reserves. Now, not only is this crucial for Saudi Arabia, it's crucial for the global economy as whole. The last thing we need right now is more attacks against one of the world's largest oil producers during an ongoing crisis in Ukraine, which has caused massive sanctions to be levied against another one of the world's largest oil producers. This would cause oil prices to skyrocket, leading to a situation where many people all over the world would not be able to afford to fuel their automobiles, fuel their homes, or even afford the goods which are transported by vehicles such as trucks, airplanes, and boats that use fuel. Now, the attack on the oil depot itself did not have any injuries or casualties and had no effect on public life or the military life of Saudi Arabia whatsoever. Essentially, the attack can be viewed as a failure. However, it did lead to a massive fire breaking out. Now, the fire was quickly contained, and probably that's a good thing. Now, this oil refinery in Jeddah, or the oil depot in Jeddah, this is not the first time this oil depot has been attacked by Houthi rebels. In fact, it's the third. An attack in 2020 produced no results. An attack in 2021, however, damaged a massive tanker in the oil depot. Now, just repairing this tanker, and one oil tanker carries up to 500,000 barrels of oil, cost $1.5 million to be repaired by Saudi Aramco. Keep in mind, this doesn't just negatively affect Saudi Arabia and the company of Aramco. It affects the entire global market for gas and oil. Now, these Houthi attacks and the ones against the oil depot are not the only ones to be carried out today. Other smaller attacks against water and electricity infrastructure around the city, the capital city of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, were carried out by Houthis, though those were also not a success. Other attacks on border towns in the southern portion of Saudi Arabia were also reported, though also to little success. Now, that being said, typically the Houthi rebels, when they carry out attacks in Saudi Arabia, do so either with drones or cruise missiles. These are inherently very difficult to defend against. Some form of anti-air defense systems need to be utilized, but these attacks can be very hard to track, very hard to know when they're hit, and very hard to intercept. What is very good at intercepting these attacks are Patriot missiles and defense systems, and THAAD anti-air and ground defense systems, which have been provided by the United States for Saudi Arabia. But nonetheless, as Houthi attacks increase against the kingdom, it's inevitable that a good portion of them are actually going to connect with their targets. Now, in September of last year, 2021, the United States removed an establishment and a deployment of patriotic anti-air missile systems and THAAD that were operated by the U.S. military outside of the international airport of Riyadh. Looking back, this was probably a mistake. The United States needs to continue its military support of Saudi Arabia in order to ensure the nation's national security. And keep in mind, Saudi Arabia's national security is important to the West and the entire world. Not just can attacks against oil tankers and the kingdom, generally speaking, lead to much, much higher fuel prices. Saudi Arabia is also a crucial nation in counterbalancing Iran. And this war in Yemen is one of the most crucial aspects of the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now, the conflict in Yemen is actually relatively complex, and we have not truly covered it on this podcast so far. We will, one of these days. The conflict is probably going to increase in its intensity with both sides, Saudi Arabia and Iran's, and inside Yemen, that would be the Yemeni government backed by Saudi Arabia and the Houthi rebels backed by Iran, to find some kind of not compromise, but to end the war favorably for their side. The war is only going to increase in its intensity, and this is going to have a negative effect on the rest of, one, global security, and two, gas prices, which is, again, the last thing we need right now. The Russian war in Ukraine has caused oil and energy prices, generally speaking, to skyrocket. And today, just the one attack against the oil refinery and the oil depot in Jeddah led to what is generally used as a benchmark for gas and energy prices, Brent crude oil, to go up at over $120 a barrel. Hopefully, these attacks are going to stop. Not only does it affect global prices, but these, keep in mind, are civilian targets. Yes, oil depots and oil refineries do power and fuel the Saudi military, which is carrying out military attacks and offensives in Yemen. However, the vast majority of this fuel and energy goes to civilian targets, and civilians and the global world that buys oil and gas from Saudi Arabia. An attack on these depots, an attack on these refineries, is not an attack against just Saudi Arabia's military. It's an attack against the nation's civilians, and can be viewed as a form of a war crime and a deliberate attack on a civilian target. And it can also be viewed as an attack on the entire global community and every single nation that depends, at least partially, on Saudi Arabia for making up part of the nation's energy portfolio. The West and any other nation that's interested in maintaining the stability of global gas prices should be providing more international aid, weapons, arms, and assistance to Saudi Arabia in their conflict in Yemen against the Iran-backed and supported Houthi rebels. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Let's have a nice open discussion about this issue. Let me know what you think about Saudi Arabia. Let me know what you think about Yemen. And let me know what you think about the Houthi rebels. Also, drop in your thoughts on Iran. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week.